Chapter 25 of The Pink Shop by Fergus HUME. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Revenge. Sir Joseph Branwen and Miss Rosie Pearl duly arrived at Weed-on-the-Sands and proceeded to the Three Fishers. Here the millionaire, who had quite a bourbon dislike to be kept waiting, found a note from his daughter, which greatly annoyed him. Mrs. Shaw wrote that with her husband she had gone to town on business. She did not mention what the business was, and would return by the 6 o'clock train, which was timed to arrive at Weed-on-the-Sands at 8. There was nothing for it but to await the return of the newly married couple, or return to London. "And I have a good mind to do so," fumed Sir Joseph, furiously tearing up the letter. "How dare Audrey treat me in this way, when I have taken the trouble to come down and see her? The minx!" "I must say," remarked Miss Pearl, with her most virtuous air, "that your daughter shows little consideration for my feelings." "For your feelings? Certainly, I came down here only on the understanding that Mrs. Shaw would be present to play the part of my chaperone." "Pooh! Pooh! Audrey is much younger than you are, Rosie." Miss Pearl colored. "She is a married woman, Sir Joseph, and as such is able by her mere presence to protect my character. And I beg that you will not call me by my Christian name in public. I do not know," went on Miss Pearl in her heavy, rich voice, "whether it would be better for me to return to London by the next train." "Nonsense! Nonsense!" "Pardon me, Sir Joseph, but it is not nonsense. I have accompanied you here to witness a family reconciliation, and to show Mrs. Shaw that I am not an undesirable relative. But I have come down with you alone in the hope that Mrs. Shaw would be present. As she is not, I doubt the propriety of remaining here. In my profession one cannot be too careful. What is to be done? We can wait here until Audrey and her confounded husband return at 8 o'clock. Then everything will be all right. Mrs. Shaw may miss the train." "Well, well," said Branwen impatiently, "there is another at 8 o'clock from London, which gets here at 10. At that hour it would be too late for me to return," Miss Pearl reflected. "I shall wait for the 8 o'clock train, and if Mrs. Shaw does not return I shall go back to London by the 9 o'clock. "Oh, I thought you were going to remain here for the night." "If Mrs. Shaw were here I should not do otherwise. What can you be thinking of, Sir Joseph, to suggest such a thing? Even the fact that your portmanteau and my trunk have arrived together as we have is a reflection on my character, now that we have learnt the absence of Mrs. Shaw. However, I shall put the matter right. Permit me." Then Miss Pearl sought out the landlady, and pointed out with many words that she had come to Weed-on-the-Sands as the guest of Mrs. Shaw, along with Mrs. Shaw's father. As Mrs. Shaw was not in the hotel, Miss Pearl expressed her determination to return to London by the 9 o'clock train if the young lady did not come back with her husband. "Therefore," ended the dancer, with an excessively virtuous air, "you will be pleased to see that my trunk is taken to the railway station if by 8 o'clock my friend does not come." The landlady quite understood and promised to comply with the request, so Miss Pearl, having defended her character, graciously consented to partake of dinner, in the company of Sir Joseph, at 6 o'clock. As the pair had arrived somewhat late in the afternoon, the meal was served almost immediately, and during its preparation Miss Pearl chatted on select subjects with her companion. When the dinner was over and they had indulged in coffee, Sir Joseph proposed that Miss Pearl should accompany him for a stroll on the smooth sands. "It is a lovely night," said Branwen, looking out the window at the full moon, "and quite a change after the fogs in London. You'll enjoy it." "Not on the sands," said Miss Pearl majestically. "People would talk if I went with you on the sands at this hour without a chaperone. But I do not mind walking to the pier, which I notice is directly in front of this hotel. There we shall be in evidence, and—" "I don't want to be in evidence. I wish to have you all to myself." "You are getting me all to yourself," said the dancer coldly. "But it does not do for a professional artist, such as I am, to invite ill-natured criticism. My mother, who is a consistent Baptist, always told me to be careful." As they strolled across the road to the rude little pier, Sir Joseph reflected how handsome she would look when the Branwen diamonds were round her white throat, and the Branwen tiara was on her graceful head. She was rather a prude, he considered, but she was also extremely beautiful, so he had little to complain of. Beauty and a passionless nature so rarely go together. With the gait of a Juno, Miss Pearl walked onto the pier. It was now close upon 8 o'clock, as they had lingered for some time over their coffee. The pier ran some distance out into the smooth water, and at the end were several seats, but there was no parapet round the verge of the jetty, and Miss Pearl chose to consider this somewhat dangerous. "Anyone might fall in with ease," she said. "Bring the bench into the very middle, Sir Joseph, and we can then sit in safety." The obedient millionaire did as he was told, although he would have laughed the former Lady Branwen to scorn had she proposed such a thing. But he was under the impression that his old, uncomely wife was dead, and that he was free to marry this lovely and imperial creature, who ordered him about so freely. In fact, having always had his own way, he found a certain amount of delight in obeying her slightest whim. So the two took their seat on the bench, which was placed at the end of the pier, in the very center, and well away from the dangerous water on either side. The night was extremely lovely, being very still. The round moon floated like a golden bubble in a starry sky, and the channel waters were spread out for miles like a carpet of silver tissues gleaming with tiny points of glittering light. The sands stretched for a long distance towards a bold headland, which jutted into the gleaming sea, and along the front of the shore gleamed the many lights of the town. People were moving up and down to enjoy the beauty of the night, and there was the murmur of many voices and the sound of laughter. After the fogs and chill of the great city, the scene was ideal. Miss Pearl so far forgot her uneasy virtue in the presence of this calm beauty that she actually leant her head on Sir Joseph's shoulder and permitted him to slip a fond arm around her substantial waist. And this, with many people walking and talking only a stone's throw away, although it must be admitted that they had the entire pier to themselves. "Did you do what I asked you to do, Joseph?" demanded Miss Pearl gently. Her use of his Christian name informed the millionaire that he was entitled to the same privilege. "Yes, Rosie, my dearest," he whispered softly. That is, as softly as such a domineering bully could whisper. "You mean the allowance to Audrey?" "Of course. She is your daughter, and however badly she may have behaved, she should be looked after. If you cut her off with a shilling, as you said you would do, people would blame me, and I do not care about beginning my married life with the reputation of being cruel to my stepdaughter." "One can never be too particular, as my mother, who is a consistent—" "Yes, yes," interrupted Branwen, who was rather weary of Miss Pearl's constant reference to her mother. "I quite understand. I have told my lawyer to write to Audrey informing her that she shall have 2,000 a year during my life, and I have today made a codicil to my will leaving her the same amount should I die. Had she obeyed me in the matter of marrying Lord Anvers, she would have had more, but I altered my will and reduced what I intended to leave her to that amount." "It is quite enough," said Miss Pearl, after a pause, and rather nervously. "I hope everything is arranged legally?" "Yes, I have signed the codicil, and the letter will be sent to Audrey at the Three Fishers tomorrow." "Why do you ask if I have arranged things legally?" "Because," said Rosie Pearl, still nervously and leaning her head more fondly on her elderly lover's shoulder, "I have a confession to make to you. On the night poor Lady Branwen was murdered, I was sleeping at the Pink Shop." I know," said Sir Joseph impatiently. "I heard from Audrey that my wife intended to stay there also, and for that reason I came round to Walpole Lane. I thought that you might meet, and that there would be a row, for Dora was always jealous of you. How she found out that I loved you, I don't know, but she did." Sir Joseph drew a deep breath. "I was glad when I was in Walpole Lane. I saw that everything was quiet. Mrs. Mellop saw me, however, when she and Audrey called at the shop at 8:30, and because she did hinted that I was concerned in the murder. I said just now," continued Miss Pearl slowly, "that Mrs. Shaw was your daughter. She is not." Sir Joseph violently pushed away the woman and sprang to his feet. "What is that you say?" he demanded in an angry voice. "You heard me, didn't you?" said Miss Pearl doggedly. "Mrs. Shaw is not your daughter." And then she related what she had overheard about the kidnapping of Colonel Isle's daughter and the fraud that had been perpetrated on the millionaire by his wife. "You knew this when you asked me to allow Audrey." "Yes, I did," said Miss Pearl with mulish obstinacy, "and you must let the codicil remain, also the allowance." "I'm hanged if I will," said Branwen savagely. "Why should I give my hard-earned money to another man's brat?" "What is 2,000 a year to you?" demanded Rosie Pearl scornfully. "Look what a reputation you will buy with it when the truth becomes known. It is worth the money. Besides, whatever your wife and Madame Coralie may have done, and I don't deny that they have acted very badly, Mrs. Shaw is at least innocent. She should not be punished. She shan't have the 2,000 a year." "Yes, she shall. If you change your codicil, I change my mind." Sir Joseph scowled at her. "You mean that you won't marry me?" "Yes, I do. After all, I can make a better match if I so choose. Why, Lord Anvers asked me to marry him." "What, when he was making love to my daughter? I mean to Audrey?" "Yes. I thought that I could reform him, but he is a man of such a notoriously bad character that I decided to refuse him. But I have many offers, and I accepted yours for certain reasons which I have no need to explain. But if you don't allow Mrs. Shaw this money, I shall marry someone else, I assure you, Sir Joseph." said Miss Pearl, standing up in the full splendor of her beauty, "that I can marry anyone I like." "I quite believe it," said Branwen grudgingly, for her beauty was undeniable and he wanted to possess it badly. "I shall take a few days to decide what is best to be done, as your revelation has taken me by surprise. I never cared much for Audrey, but I really believed that she was my own child. The scheming woman!" And he clenched his huge fist fiercely. "Tell me, Rosie, have you any idea who murdered my wife?" Miss Pearl shook her head. The voices stopped suddenly, and when I went down the stairs later, with the idea of seeing Lady Branwen and telling her what I knew, I found her dead. "I believe," added Miss Pearl cautiously, "that Madame Coralie murdered your wife." "I quite believe it." "Just what that infernal Flora would do," said Sir Joseph grimly, "if she did. But there, as Dora is dead, I shall let the matter rest, although I should dearly like to bring Flora to the gallows. The reopening of the case would do me no good." "Nor me," said Rosie Pearl decisively, "for I should have to confess to the police what I have confessed to you, and then I would be blamed for having kept it quiet so long. I only hope that Miss Perry Tote will leave the matter alone." "Who is she?" "A detective who is looking into the case on the behalf of Mrs. Shaw, and who called on me after she had heard that Mrs. Shaw had seen me. I was forced to tell her all I knew, so she may—" "She will," interrupted Sir Joseph in an angry tone. "I dare say Audrey and her husband have gone to town about the business, and—" "Hush!" Miss Pearl stopped him with a gesture. "Someone is coming. Do not speak of these very private matters so loudly." Sir Joseph turned, and down the pier came a short, dark figure very rapidly, panting for breath. The figure was that of a woman, and advanced straight up to the millionaire. Branwen pushed the newcomer back, and was about to speak, when she flung aside her veil. The millionaire staggered against Miss Pearl, and turned quite green with terror. "What is it? Oh, what is it?" cried the dancer, infected with his terror. "Who is it, you mean?" said the woman, with a taunting laugh. "It is Lady Branwen, Miss Rosie Pearl. You won't be able to marry my husband after all." Miss Pearl, for once, was shaken out of her calmness, and but for her fashionable hat her hair would have risen on end. "Lady Branwen is dead," she gasped, shrinking from the shapeless figure. "Lady Branwen is very much alive," jeered the other woman, pointing at Sir Joseph. "Look at that beast! That beast!" she glared. Sir Joseph, astonished at the speech from his hitherto meek wife, recovered himself with a violent effort. "You aren't Dora. She would never have dared to speak to me like that. You are Flora, who— I am Dora, who has been hammered into hardness by your cruelty. Flora is dead, and I masqueraded as her with the yashmak, and—" Then, stammered Miss Pearl with genuine horror, "you killed her?" "Yes," said Lady Branwen simply, and looked triumphantly at her husband. "I killed her because she threatened to tell Joseph that Audrey was not his daughter." You fiend!" stuttered Branwen, with a look of positive terror in his eyes. He could not understand how his formerly meek wife had changed into this hard, desperate woman, any more than he could exactly grasp how she had risen from the dead in this startling fashion. "I am what you have made me," said Lady Branwen fiercely. "I was a good woman until you turned me into a fiend, but I have seen Audrey, and I have told her all the truth. Then I came here to do justice." How did you know I was here?" demanded Sir Joseph, who did not like the sinister looks of his wife. "Audrey told me that you and that woman were coming down to see her. I ran away into the fog when Perry Tote would have arrested me, and caught the 6 o'clock train. On arriving here, I went to the hotel, and they told me that you were on the pier, and now—" She turned violently on Miss Pearl. "Don't you dare to marry my husband." Miss Pearl drew herself up. "I certainly shall not do so. My reputation—" "Is of the worst, you slut," sneered Lady Branwen, beside herself with rage. "It is wholly false," gasped the dancer, on her dignity at once. "I have an unspotted reputation, and my mother— You are here alone with my husband. That is enough for me. How dare—" "Don't cry out so, Dora. You would draw a crowd," said Sir Joseph, noticing that several people were turning their heads towards the pier. "Yes, I will draw a crowd." She came towards Branwen, looking so fierce that he backed away from her. "You have ruined my life. I have lost Audrey through you. There is nothing left for me to live for, and if I do live, I shall be arrested for Flora's death. You brute! You beast! You—" She backed him right to the end of the pier, and then, springing forward, threw her arms round him. "We will die together!" she screamed wildly. The next moment the two fell over into the deep water, and Miss Pearl ran wildly up the pier, shrieking for help. It came too late. Both man and wife were dead. End of chapter 25.
Chapter 26 of The Pink Shop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jessica Hendra. The Pink Shop by Fergus HUME. Chapter 26. Final Explanations. 1 month after the death of Sir Joseph and his wife at Weed-on-the-Sands, Ralph was talking to his fairy godmother in her boudoir. He was dressed for a journey, and Lady Sandby was saying a few last words to him. Audrey was yet in her bedroom, making final preparations for departure. Since the occurrence of the tragedy, she had been staying with Lady Sandby along with her husband, and the young couple had only waited for all things to be settled to start on a voyage to Australia. Lady Sandby was expressing now, as she had expressed before, her approval of the trip. "I think you are very wise, my dear boy," she said, leaning back in her comfortable chair. "A journey round the world will do Audrey endless good." "Audrey?" said Shaw with a smile. "Colonel Ills will call her Elsie." "Well, that is natural, since it was her mother's name. The Colonel seems to be devoted to the memory of his wife. Had she lived, he would not have worshipped her so much." "Granny, that is cynical. Some men can remain lovers always. I'm sure that I shall always worship Audrey." "Well," said Lady Sandby with a charming smile, "in your case there is much excuse. You and Audrey, Elsie, oh, dear me, how puzzling it is for her to have 2 names. But you have come through so much trouble in company that you understand one another better than most married people. And anxiety has drawn you together. Natural. Very, very natural." "Poor Audrey. She has had a very unhappy time lately," said the young man gravely. "And indeed, all her life she has had trouble, more or less. Sir Joseph never cared for her, you know." "Oh, that man never cared for anyone save himself," said Lady Sandby tartly. "He was a bear. A clever bear, I admit, but still a bear. I suppose that one should not speak evil of the dead. All the same, well, I shall say no more." "Let us speak of Sir Joseph as kindly as we can," observed Shaw quietly. "For after all, he has left Audrey 2,000 a year. Out of an estate worth $1 million or 2, it isn't much." "It is enough for us both until I make an actual success as a barrister." "Ah," Lady Sandby wagged her old head. "That is the only thing I have to say against this very sensible journey. Is it wise, Ralph, to interrupt your career?" "Yes, on the assumption that absence makes the heart grow fonder. But even if it were not wise, Granny, I should still undertake the journey for the sake of Audrey. So much of the case has been published in the papers that if Audrey and I remained in London, we should constantly be bothered by silly people asking questions. If we travel for a year, as we intend to do, the affair will be forgotten." "Lady Branwen went down with the deliberate intention of killing her husband. Did she not, Ralph?" "I can't really say. She certainly said in the office that she would never see Audrey again, and was going away to do justice. Perry Tote would have had her arrested, but she slipped away in the fog, having learnt from Audrey that Sir Joseph and Miss Pearl were at the Three Fishes Hotel at Weed-on-the-Sands. She caught the 6 o'clock train and arrived at 8. Then she asked at the hotel where her husband was to be found. In this way she came on to the pier, and having made a scene which attracted the attention of those on the promenade, she suddenly jumped at Branwen and flung both herself and him into the deep water. When the bodies were discovered they could scarcely be parted, so tight was Lady Branwen's embrace." "Well, I expect the miserable woman had some idea of punishing the brute to whom she had been bound for so many unhappy years," said Lady Sandby after a pause. "But I also think she took sudden advantage of his being on the pier to drown both him and herself. Miss Pearl made a fine lot of trouble over the matter." Shaw could not help smiling. "Miss Pearl was very much concerned about her reputation, and caused it to be generally known that she, like Sir Joseph, had really and truly believed Lady Branwen to be dead. Miss Pearl also made public the fact that she had induced Sir Joseph to make a codicil to his will giving Audrey, as my wife, the 2,000 a year. Finally, she wrote a letter to the papers and stated at the inquest that she had accompanied Sir Joseph to Weed-on-the-Sands with the sole idea of reconciling him to his daughter. In fact, she made herself out to be a conventional martyr, and everyone believed her." "Oh, I don't think the woman was really ill-natured," said the old lady with a shrug. "She certainly behaved very well over Audrey's money, but I expect she did so in order not to appear the unjust stepmother." "Granny, Granny, you never credit anyone with good intentions." Oh, I credit Miss Rosie Pearl with all the virtues. She says she has them, so we must believe her. All the same, she has thought it necessary to accept an American engagement for 3 years. I expect she will return as the wife of an American millionaire. Not at all, said Lady Sandby coolly. She is going to marry Lord Anvers with the intention of reforming him. He has followed her to the States for that purpose. Poor Miss Pearl, said Ralph in a sympathetic tone. Lady Sandby laughed. Poor Anvers, I think, she said seriously. But what about the Pink Shop? It has been shut up, and the assistants have dispersed to the four winds, resuming, I believe, their real names. Zuibi has gone to her mother in Devonshire to live, Palisade has married her artist, and Perry Banau is Audrey's maid, as you know. Fancy having a dumb maid, and yet it has its advantages. Perry Banau. I do hope your wife will give her a less heathen name. Will keep Audrey's secrets thoroughly. Audrey has no secrets, said Ralph somewhat stiffly, and Perry Banau is devoted to her. She has every reason to be. Few women would take a maid from that Pink Shop. It is too notorious. Oh, my dear Granny, it was conducted in the most respectable way, both by Madame Coralie and by Lady Branwyn when she masqueraded as her sister. I certainly heard nothing against it, said Lady Sandby. But how did Lady Branwyn manage to conduct a business about which she knew nothing? Well, Eddie Vale learnt the truth as he found his wife dead. Also, in order to carry on the business and keep up her disguise, Lady Branwyn had to tell Badora who she really was. Then Vale and Badora were accomplices after the fact? Yes, they were. How learned you are, Granny, said Ralph with a smile. For that reason they bolted before the police could get hold of them. Inspector Lanton was very anxious to bring them forward as witnesses. It is just as well that he did not, else many more details would have been in the papers. As it is, the romance of these two sisters and the substituted child, and Dora strangling Flora, or Flora Dora, I'm sure I don't know which, has startled everyone. That's why I'm taking Audrey away, so that people may forget the affair, Granny. And it was Dora Lady Branwyn who strangled Flora Madame Coralie. She did it, I believe, on the impulse of the moment, when Flora threatened to tell the truth to Sir Joseph. Do you think that man would have turned Audrey out of doors had he found she was not his daughter? He turned her out of doors when he thought that she was, said Shaw grimly. And but for your help, dear Lady Sandby, Audrey would have been in a terrible position. I think you should rather thank Lady Branwyn, who took the poor child in when Sir Joseph behaved so brutally. Yes, she loved Audrey, and it was for Audrey's sake that she strangled her wicked sister, even if she drowned Sir Joseph for her own sake. It is very strange, added Ralph musingly, that Audrey never suspected the false Madame Coralie was her mother. Oh, the very resemblance and the knowledge that Flora and Dora were twins put Audrey off the scent, explained Lady Sandby easily. I see no difficulty about the matter. Then the birthmark was misleading, and Lady Branwyn changed her voice by some drink, from being soft into a harsh note. Finally, she nearly always wore that yasmak. Lady Branwyn did more than change her voice, Granny. She changed the whole of her nature, and from being a meek, timid little woman, she became as hard and cruel as Madame Coralie had been. The twin natures got mixed up, I suppose, said Granny flippantly. Well, both the sisters are dead, and so is the man who played with them as a child, so let us say no more about them. What has become of Sir Joseph's money? Beyond the 2,000 a year to Audrey, which was left to her as my wife, and various legacies, the rest goes to his next of kin. Miss Pearl must have been angry that she did not get any money. She was. Sir Joseph intended to make a new will after he married her, as it was useless to make one before. But Lady Branwyn, rising from the grave, upset everything. Poor woman, sighed the barrister. She's dead. So all we can say is, rest her soul. Lady Sandby nodded solemnly. By the way, where have Vale and Badora gone to, and who is going to carry on the Pink Shop business? I don't know where they have gone. Bolted to America, I understand. At all events, Lanton can't find them, and I don't expect they will turn up in England again, seeing what a record they have left behind. As to the Pink Shop, it is closed forever. I told you so. One last question, said Lady Sandby. Who dropped the label near the door of the court to make the police think robbery was the cause of the crime? Lady Branwyn, masquerading as Madame Coralie. and Eddie Vale managed the whole wicked business. He also got the diamonds, or the most part of them, and it is with that money that he has bolted to America with Bedora. Do you wish to hear any more? For I am anxious to stop talking about this business." "Tell me," said Lady Sandby, quite forgetting that she had asked what she called a last question. "What of Perry Tote?" "Oh, she has got the reward, as really and truly it was through her that the truth came to light. Sir Joseph's lawyers paid her the money last week, and she told me that she intends to retire from business and marry her purser. Any more questions?" Lady Sandby thought, and was about to ask another, when the door of the boudoir opened and Colonel Ilse, looking years younger, appeared on the threshold. "Pardon me for entering unannounced, Lady Sandby," he said in his most polite manner, "but I have brought my motor to the street door." "You couldn't very well have brought it to this door, Colonel," said the old dame dryly. "So you are going with the young couple?" "Not immediately," said the newcomer. "I must allow Ralph and Elsie to resume their interrupted honeymoon. I shall join them when they reach New York, after their trip through Australia and New Zealand. Perhaps it is selfish of me, but I have been without my daughter for so long that I want to have her to myself." "What do you say to that, Ralph?" asked Lady Sandby, with twinkling eyes. "Oh, it is natural, and the Colonel and I get on splendidly together," said the young man, laughing. "When we return, the Colonel is going to live with us, or rather, Audrey and I are going to live with the Colonel." "What is mine is yours," said Colonel Ilse readily. "I have a country house and plenty of money, to which Elsie is heiress, so when I go you will have no troubles in the pecuniary sense. I really wish," added the Colonel, somewhat anxiously, "that Miss Pearl had not induced Sir Joseph to leave Audrey any money." "Oh, that is only fair, considering how he behaved to her and to her mother, I mean Lady Branwen, when he was alive. And the more money Ralph and Audrey have, the sooner he will reach the Woolsack and get a title." "That is a long way off yet, Granny." "Well, I don't know. Audrey is ambitious and will make you work, my dear boy, after you have had this long holiday. But there is one point to be settled straight away." "What is that?" asked the Colonel and Ralph simultaneously, for the old dame looked wonderfully serious. "Is the girl to be called Audrey or Elsie?" "I shall call her Elsie," said Ilse promptly, "after her mother, my dear wife, and I'm sure Ralph would not object." "No," said Ralph after a pause, "I don't think I shall. In fact, when I get used to the change of name I shall prefer it, as I should like all memory of Audrey's connection with the Branwens to be forgotten." "Well, call her Elsie," said Lady Sandby, "and the sole memory of a very disagreeable time will be the 2,000 a year." "Which ought to be given to charity," said Ilse abruptly. "Give it to Miss Pearl," suggested Lady Sandby. "No, no," said Ralph with great common sense. "We shall keep it. Sir Joseph owes Audrey something for the way in which he treated her." Lady Sandby arose. "You said that before," she remarked. "My dear boy, you are beginning to repeat yourself, so it is time you went." Colonel Ilse looked at his watch. "If Elsie is ready, we must go, if we want to catch the Fenchurch Street train for the Tilbury docks." As if in answer to his question, Mrs. Shaw entered, ready for the journey, smiling and happy, although she looked rather thin. This was not to be wondered at, after all she had gone through. Her father embraced her tenderly, as he always did when she came into his presence. It seemed as though he could never love her enough. Then came fond farewells on the part of Lady Sandby, who insisted on descending to see the party off. "And I hope you will be happy, Elsie," she said, kissing her at the door. "Do you call me Elsie, as father does?" asked Mrs. Shaw, smiling. "Yes, and I shall call you Elsie also," said her husband, assisting her into the motor car. "From this moment we leave Audrey Branwen and her miserable past behind. Now begins the happy existence of Elsie Shaw." "Thank heaven," said the girl piously, and her father and husband echoed the wish as the motor car hummed away towards the new life of peace and pleasure which waited for them all. "Thank heaven also," said Lady Sandby, waving her hand. "That is the last of the Pink Shop and all its misery." The end. End of chapter 26. End of the Pink Shop by Fergus Hume.